Welcome, everyone, to the Racist War and Everything. We're on episode 228. Coming to you, I'm sorry, a couple of days late. Knowlesy had a foam party or something he had to attend, but he's back now. And
yep, old man wet t-shirt contest.
Yeah, so we thought we'd start off today with a discussion of industrial relations. Certainly, what was very, very big news is that the federal government has succeeded in passing its legislation. It's gone through the parliament to make it the law, essentially, that the CFMEU, every single branch of the CFMEU, will be placed under administration. I don't know if this is actually the term that we should be using, because a lot of people don't even know what it means. Like, what does it mean for an organization to come under administration? Well, it actually just means the government takes it over. The people at the top, the people who are running the union, and even many of the lower-ranking employees are actually put out of a job and replaced by bureaucrats or whoever else is working for this so-called administration. So it is an extreme move. It goes very far. And what we have here has gone even further than what we initially expected, because they did say that the West Australian branch and the Australia Capital Territory branch were not going to be included. The reason being because there's no allegations against them about, organised crime infiltration or anything like that. None of that featured.
They functionally don't fucking exist.
Yeah. And look, I mean, still, when it comes to the other branches, like Victoria, obviously, are number one, and then there's some allegations related to New South Wales and Queensland as well. They're still just allegations, though. I mean, this is definitely what you call trial by media. It was especially that episode of 60 Minutes where they did the whole episode. Very rare for them to actually just do one topic for an episode of 60 Minutes. But that's what they did. And, I mean, look, when we covered that at the time, we said, well, essentially what they're saying Setka said on Sunday. So he did an interview for Spotlight on Channel 7. Sorry, did my audio cut?
Yeah, I heard that fucking noise, but you came back. I don't know what the fuck.
Okay, not sure what happened there. But yeah, I guess this was sort of John Setka's right to reply. You get to appear on Channel 7's version of 60 Minutes. It's also the same show that gave Bruce Lamon a voice. So anyway, what Setka said, concerning bikie gangs, organised crime, whatever, is he said, yeah, look, of course, there are people in the building industry, people who work construction jobs and trades, who are also the members of so-called 1% outlaw motorcycle clubs. He said that when it comes to representing members of the union, if someone is a member of the union and also a member of a bikie club, they don't discriminate on those terms. They see that as an attack on freedom of association. And yeah, I I basically see it
I
the
mean,
same
it
way.
is.
Yeah, it is. Which, yeah, like I said, it really, if you've got a problem with that, essentially what you're saying is, well, what you say about white nationalists, which is that they just don't deserve to have a job, full stop. You know, and
Well, yeah, but people
it's a
say
very
like, oh, people when
common
we kind
tactic,
of
isn't it?
mention this stuff. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say people when we mention this stuff, they're like, "Oh, why are you defending criminals?" It's like, dude, they've come after us, white national organizations in Australia, with literally the same laws that they've applied to bikies.
Maybe that's why I've got a bit of sympathy here, because I mean, I've always considered it to be really dirty tactics to just go after someone's job, to essentially try to ruin their life um, in any way you can. And, like a lot of cops, they end up getting, information or some degree of cooperation from people when they say, okay, look, if you don't want to talk to me when I call you or when I turn up at your house, you know what I might do? I might
Hmm.
drop into your job to say hi there.
Yep, did
How
that to
about
me.
that? Yeah, I've heard plenty of people where that's been said before. Because, yeah, I mean, what does that look like? Cops coming up to question you while you're in the middle of a shift. What if your boss sees it? But they do it. They fucking do that shit. Now, look, maybe you can make an argument that maybe some of those bikie gangs, they don't deserve to, say, be hired as union delegates or intermediaries, whatever it might be. But even then, you would have to show that there's some sort of conflict of interest where the club that they're a member of is, gaining financially or something from, dirty deals that have been going on. But really, if you look at the stories from Channel 9, there wasn't any of that. There was nothing really about like kickbacks or anything going on. It was just
No.
bikies who were working in construction and were also members of the CFMEU. I mean, they've got to work jobs somewhere, don't they? And I guess you would expect people that are bikies to work in construction. You know, it
Yeah, no, I
shouldn't
was
come
gonna
as such
say
a
like,
surprise.
I probably iterated this last time, but if you're going to try and exclude these people from workforces of general society, you're going to harden their position as criminals. If they can't make money
Right,
and make a living inside of a system, they're going to work outside of a system, and outside of this system in Australia is crime.
of course. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I was going to say. And it's like, okay, and if you're in a bikie gang, okay, you call that a criminal network. So that would mean that it would be much easier for those people to get connected in terms of making money off crime, like of course selling drugs. Like, don't you think that these are the people who need jobs the most, so that you can keep them away from criminal enterprises? You know. So
Yeah,
yeah,
at
the
least at
the
least
whole
the
thing
low
is
hanging
stupid.
people.
Yeah. Okay, so look, the Liberal Party or the coalition initially rejected this plan because they thought it needed to go further. Now they did strike a deal with Labor. That's how this got pushed through. So for one thing, they wanted it to be a minimum of 3 years. So Labor gave them that. And they said it's going to be minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 5 years. Now think about that. That is a minimum of
Hmm.
3 years that the government has taken over the CFMEU at every level. That is fucking
We're going to see
extreme.
some wacky
That
shit when
really,
they release it eventually.
yeah.
And
They
again, there isn't
also
going to be a
wanted.
fucking inquiry because when the fuck is there an earnest inquiry into a an arm of the government? There never is.
No, of course not. And I mean, but part of the purpose of administration is so that they can go through their financial records and everything, and thus conduct an inquiry into them, into the union. That's what they say is going to be happening here. Um, I would suggest that they instead would be spending all of that time trying to undermine the union and make them less influential. If that wasn't the case, why is it that it is so strongly supported by the Master Builders Association? They didn't even want the coalition to waste time pushing with amendments because they wanted this rushed through as quickly as they possibly could. Now, on those amendments, the coalition was also asking that the CFMEU be banned from giving any form of political donations. So, again, they got a deal on that. During the entire time that they are under administration, they are not allowed to give any political donations at all. So that means for a minimum of 3 years, CFMEU will not be able to donate
Labour
money.
Party get $0 dues. Have you seen Jordan Shanks fucking pissing and shitting himself over this?
No, I really don't follow him, man, unless I hear people, talking about him in the Israel lobby or something.
He used to come back to Perth so I can thug hunt him.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of cool he went after the lobby and he went after Drew Pavlou and that, but, you'd have to go a lot further.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the best thing to come out of him recently is I learned a new term, shit wizard.
Okay. All right. So to get back to the John Setka interview on 7 Spotlight, which was on Sunday, he said that there was a secret deal that went down between himself, the then Workplace Relations Minister, Tony Burke, and the head of the ACTU, Sally McManus. And that was that if he were to resign from the Victorian branch of the CFMEU, which he did, and remember he did that, on the Friday before the 60 Minutes episode went to air, just before that. He said that a deal was struck that if he did resign, then the government would not threaten the CFMEU with putting them under administration. You said it wouldn't happen. And obviously, he's now saying that the government has gone back on that promise, has broken its promise to him because, they've gone through with it. Now, as you can imagine, everyone's denied this. Albo, Tony Burke, Sally McManus, everyone in the Labor Party, Murray Watt as well, the new IR minister, they've all just said that one of them said it was laughable. Murray Watt said it was quite bizarre. So, take what you will from all of that. I got to say, look, I am skeptical of John Setka's claims there. I just can't really imagine the Australian Labor Party coming up with a deal like that behind closed doors. I just can't see that as happening. The other thing is, I think they basically were intending to do this anyway. Albo is no friend of John Setka. Albo being a member of the soft left faction. I always forget. At the federal
bombing
level,
left versus the construction.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, there's 4 factions federally. There's the hard left, the soft left, the centre, and the right. I'll have to look this up again, but I know Albo's part of either the hard or the soft left, right? But all 4 of those factions are allied with different unions. And I'm pretty sure that the CFMEU is actually allied with the right faction. I might be thinking
makes sense because if you're pro-construction and pro-worker and all that kind of stuff and pro-industry, you are in the right of the Labor Party now and have been for quite some time.
Yeah, I mean, particularly if you want to, go by what John Setka said about Rosie Batty when he was, basically spruiking men's rights issues, albeit for a short while, and, he did kind of cuck out on it in the end. But yeah, and also I think because, people will sometimes say, like Jacquie Lambie said this, that the CFMEU is a misogynist boys' club. I don't know about that. I mean, look, okay, yeah, it is mainly men, obviously. But there's females there who are at least supportive. I mean, the other big news on the union, of course, was the massive strike that they did on Monday, I think. Around Australia, there was around 60,000 people who went to those rallies. And it wasn't just construction workers, it wasn't just the CFMEU, it was many other unions and allies who joined them. So, yeah, they're not going down without a fight. And there's even talk now of a potential High Court challenge to this. So remember, initially, the government was actually just going to move by executive order to take over the union, to put it into administration. The union said there's no way we're just going to let you do that. We'll fight that every step of the way. That is why the government then went and legislated. But unions are in talks with lawyers now to see maybe if there's, a constitutional issue at play here. Maybe they can fight it on those grounds. Well, obviously, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So
more here. Watch this spot.
Albo is not allied with the CFMEU.
No, he's allied with the Glory Hole Workers Union.
No, but I mean, like, seriously, though, I think he's allied with the MISOs, the Miscellaneous Workers Union. I'm pretty sure he is. And, like, I've said this before, but, it is important to remember this stuff in this context, that the right faction doesn't necessarily mean you're part of the right wing of the Labor Party.
Nope.
It simply means you're allied with a certain union. Okay? So
you look at those manly Soviet Union posters and you get hard.
Yeah, I mean, someone like Julia Gillard, she was a member of the left faction, but she did not govern like a member of the left faction at all. She was a very kind of centrist prime minister. So there are factional issues at play here. A lot of commentators have talked about the left faction of Labor trying to assert control and trying to remove the right faction, particularly the New South Wales right, from that position of leading the Labor Party, which it has done for decades. Okay, believe it or not, this actually dates back to Gough Whitlam. Now, I know everyone looks at Gough Whitlam as like this socialist hero or something, but believe it or not, he was part of the right faction as well. A lot of his views were considered to be anathema to traditional Labor voters. For example, the Labor Party used to support the abolition of the Senate. They didn't want a House of Review. They just wanted a unicameral parliament. And that was put to rest by Gough Whitlam. He said, no, that's undemocratic. We can't be pushing for things like that. So he was actually sort of a right-wing reformer of the Labor Party. And then it just sort of, fell into line thereafter. I mean, Hawke and Keating, you could argue, basically ushered in the age of neoliberalism into Australia. They really took Labor into a right turn. Yeah. Now, ever since Bill Shorten resigned as leader, also member of the right faction, allied with the Australian Workers' Union, Albo's been able to kind of, shuffle the pieces in his favour. And he was made, he was given certain people promotions. And I don't just mean in the cabinet, I mean when it comes to staffing positions and the national executive, things like that. And the left faction is slowly consolidating and, basically fighting for supremacy to knock the right faction off. And a lot of commenters have said that maybe this is actually what it's about. Taking on the CFMEU so that you can, at the same time, take on the right faction of the Labor Party.
Yeah, I would actually tend to agree with that because it didn't make sense to me. Like, why the fuck are you going after the CFMEU for criminal involvement, like, you know, organized crime involvement now? It's been like fucking public knowledge that was the case since like forever.
Yeah. Right. I mean, look, I've known quite a few people who've worked in construction and everything. And yeah, they'll say, well, yeah, you know, I know this guy who's a member of the Finks or whatever it is. But what I never hear about is like a story about that guy, say, robbing the construction site or something like that. You know, maybe they do some dodgy shit in their spare time, like do drugs or whatever. But I don't think they mix any of that with their employment on the construction site.
No.
So
No, a lot of the times it's necessary, and actually a lot of, the actual criminal shit that's happening with bikie gangs and etc. is them laundering money through materials orders.
yeah,
which doesn't really damage anyone. It just gets black money back into the market again.
Yeah. So, in terms of the reaction against this, the CFMEU, some of the leaders who have been, you know, stood down, they're out of a job now, out of their paid job, and, you know, administrators put in their place. Some of them have actually said that they will campaign for all their members to not vote Labor. In fact, one of the quotes was absolute destruction of the Labor Party.
Total Labor death?
You could say that. And, you know, maybe that is part of Albanese's plan. You know, because not that, you know, he wants the Labor Party to be voted out, but if he can separate those people who are members of the Labor Party and are allied to the CFMEU, well, that's a win from a factional point of view for him. He's removing the influence of the right faction and a union that's not favourable to his leadership or his position or the general ascendancy of the left faction in Labor. And that, you know, is what they could get. Now that some of them are going further than this, they're calling for more strikes. They're calling for like a general strike, which means, you know, literally everyone goes on strike or everyone who wants to. Christy Kane, who is the former national secretary of the CFMEU, is saying that he's urging the maritime union members to walk off the wharves en masse. Because Christy Kane, I'm pretty sure, came from the MUA, the Maritime Union. Because remember, they're merged now. But, you know, he would have enormous influence in, you know, getting them to take action like that. And the fucking wharfies will do it, you know. They are just as militant as the brickies, you know. They will fucking walk off the job. So, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about a minimum of 3 years for the CFMEU to be under government control, don't expect them to just sit on their hands for those 3 years. They're going to fuck some shit up. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Okay, now reactions from other unions. So the Electrical Trades Union, the ETU, which in terms of militancy, I would say they're number 2 in the country. They absolutely consider themselves allies of the CFMEU and the wharfies. They said that they're going to withhold $1 million in the political donations to the ALP. So there you go again. So imagine that, like, you know, unions allied with the right faction withdrawing money, members of the Labor Party ripping up their membership because they're allied with some of these unions. You just keep knocking out that right faction influence every time you do that. Okay. So over in Queensland, the Queensland CFMEU boss, or former boss, of course, Michael Raybar, he called the Queensland Premier Stephen Miles a joke of a leader who cannot communicate with the public And yeah, same thing. He's going to encourage all of his members not to vote Labor. He hasn't said, vote coalition, or I don't think he said to vote for anyone, but they are saying don't vote Labor. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see where they go. Because
I mean, just in terms of that donation removal, they've basically ripped Tasmania off the map for donations, and they've basically like taken like a third of the budget of Australia, Western Australia, and between 20 and 15% of their total donations, depending on which state.
You mean of the CFMEU?
No, from the electricians and actually, the CFMEU. Fuck yeah, that's like nearly 2 mil. So yeah, double that basically.
So yeah, Michael Raybar referred to Stephen Miles as Forrest Gump. He said, "What a joke of a leader. Talk about a try-hard who just hasn't got it. He can't even communicate with the public out there. What you can do, you'll have that opportunity in less than 2 months. Vote with your feet." There you go. He's referring to the Queensland state election there, and he's saying, don't vote for Stephen Miles. Now, look, Labor are pretty much guaranteed to lose that election anyway. So effectively what they're doing now is they're in damage control. Can we make sure that we don't lose our safe seats now? Because, look, if, we just covered the Northern Territory election. If you want to go check that out, we did an episode of The Racer Decides on that. Go to racer.biz if you can't find the links. That is largely seen as an election that was won on crime. Now, they have had the exact same problems in Queensland with crime. That's where that Sudanese prick stabbed the 70-year-old grandmother to death. So people are fucking raw about crime in Queensland as well. And now that I've seen this result out of the Northern Territory, especially considering the bad state that the CLP was actually in prior to that election, I'm looking at Queensland now and I'm thinking it's going to be a landslide as well. Like, the Libs are going to shit it in. I'm not saying they deserve it, but because of that red hot anger out there about crime, I think they're a shoo-in, and I think Labor know that. And I think they're very nervous about more traditional Labor voters actually just abandoning them and, I don't know, voting maybe for Katter or even the Greens. Remember that the Greens are pretty much the only political force in the federal parliament who voted against those laws. The Teals all sided with the government on this. The other crossbenchers sided with the government. It was really only the Greens who opposed it. And when it comes to the rallies and speakers that they've had at those rallies, the only politicians, again, have come from the Greens, not from Labor, not from the party that is supposed to be their political arm. It's quite extraordinary. It's like we really are seeing the kind of the divorce of, let's say, the more militant unions from the Labor Party. And the Labor Party started with unions. That's the foundation of most.
Yeah, it's the Labor Party.
Yeah, they start with unions organising politically. That's how it started in Britain. That's how they started here. It's usually how it works. Okay, so now here was something interesting. So I've got a story here from the ABC. Now this again concerns the CFMEU, the building industry, and organised crime, but it's a little different to what you think. So the federal government has ordered an investigation here. Now, this was after the ABC uncovered allegations that outlaw bikie gangs threatened a CFMEU delegate during the union's dispute with a construction company over a project in Brisbane. Okay, so this is actually, if we believe these allegations, is actually an example of where not only were the union not linked to the bikie gang in question here. And by the way, the bikie gang in question is the Comancheros, which is basically
Oh
a
boy.
Lebanese only. That it started off. It was founded by a Scotsman, but it evolved into a Lebs only bikie group. That's what they are now.
Yeah, at this point they should just take the fucking Comancheros English of the thing and just replace it with some of that squiggly ass Arab shit.
Okay, so they reckon what happened was the Comancheros, so the national president, Bemir, Sarovic, sounds like he might be Slavic, but he was also known as Benji. And then his business partner, it said that these Melbourne-based bikies who appeared in Queensland wearing bum bags and T-shirts held themselves out to the CFMEU as directors with a financial interest in the company. And they were basically threatening the CFMEU to back off and give in to the construction company's demands. Okay? So what is being alleged here is that the Comancheros were acting on behalf of the construction company, not on behalf of the CFMEU, but on behalf of the construction company, and that they were threatening the CFMEU with violence if they didn't give in. So this is actually the complete opposite of what people have been accusing. Okay, so look, on that note, we're going to have a lot more to say on this. Like I said, the union is not going to sit on its hands for the next 3 years while the administration is undergoing. So yeah, definitely we'll have more on that. So just to wrap up some other IR news, and then we'll get to the other big story, which is the foreign students cap. We've got a pay dispute between Tasmania's Electrical Trades Union, the ETU, and Tas Networks. And this apparently led to a rescheduling of the game between Hawthorn and North Melbourne. Don't ask me to know much more details than that. I don't follow the footy. So anyway, they had to change it from 4:30 to 12:30, and that was because there may have been a loss of power to the venue, to the stadium. So if you had the game at 4:40, you need to turn the stadium lights on. So they had to have it like right in the afternoon so to avoid that. So yeah. It was also involved the Communications, Electrical and Plumbing Union, CEPU. That's basically just the plumbers union. It's not just the CFMEU who are disrupting or threatening to disrupt the construction of that other stadium, whatever it's called, the one right on the coast. Yeah. We all know about that one. It's the one, to welcome Tasmania into the AFL with the Tasmanian Devils, because John Secker was saying that they were going to cause huge industrial strife on that job if the AFL didn't sack that guy who was like the head umpire, because he previously was part of the ABCC, the construction regulator. And, it's their job to basically recommend charges to the police to charge the CFMEU. That is essentially what the ABCC existed for.
What the fuck?
Okay.
How do you cross many portfolios? That's fucked.
It doesn't seem like a logical career transition, does it? go from the
Oh.
construction regulator into head umpire of the AFL. It doesn't really make sense.
Oi, mate, red card, you fucking impaled a construction worker on a fucking steel beam.
Okay, so did you know that we now have the right to disconnect?
Yes.
So Tony Burke did. He passed a number of pieces of legislation concerning different industrial relations reforms. There's still more to come. But anyway, yeah, one of them was the right to, say, not respond to phone messages and emails once you're off the clock.
Tell people to piss off.
A lot of workers, they're expected to be on call for things that you could deem to be urgent or whatever it is. Now, that doesn't, it doesn't go for everyone, like emergency responders and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Some of them obviously have to be on call. That's just the nature of the job. But if you just work a pretty standard office job or something like that, and your boss says that you should be checking your email after hours, well, they can't make you do that anymore.
Get that in writing and then fucking charge them for it.
Yeah. So if they do expect that of you, you can, say, record the evidence and take it to the Fair Work Commission, and they can be fined for doing that. It's now a crime for them to do that. So, just bear that in mind if you encounter an employer who tries to put you under that kind of pressure.
This is one of the instances where you can fuck your employer.
It is. Now, finally, on IR, the union movement, specifically the Australian Manufacturers Workers Union, they're calling for the Labor Party's Future Made in Australia plan. And remember, this is the plan basically to manufacture green energy products in Australia. They want those to go exclusively to union labour. So they want to be able to sign enterprise bargaining agreements where these jobs pretty much exclusively go to union members. As you can imagine, the business lobby is very, very worried that something like that would happen. Look, considering the direction that the Labor Party is currently taking in terms of actually taking the unions on head on, I can't imagine this happening. So, okay, the AMWU is making this demand. Will they actually get it? I very much doubt it. Cool. So let's move on to foreign students. Now, please don't get too excited about this. The fact that, yes, we do now have a cap on the amount of international enrollments for 2025.
Guess what? It doesn't mean shit.
It means, look, it does amount to a cut if you're going by the if you're going by the post-pandemic levels, which we should all know were astronomically high. And the government even admitted that part of the reason they were so high was to make up for the time we lost during COVID, where we had closed borders and everything. So anyway, the cap for 2025 for international student enrollments has been set to 270,000. Now, I pointed out on the race's social media that is actually almost 50% of our annual net intake, because our annual net intake as of late was over 600,000. Here we're talking about 270,000. That is almost half. Now, to give you the full detail, however, that 270,000, that does include students who are already enrolled and who are already in Australia on student 500 visas. It doesn't mean that they will allow 270,000 new students into Australia, just to make that clear. Okay. All right, fair enough. But what does that actually mean in terms of overall numbers? Well, here's what it means. It is going to be round about a 20% cut of post-pandemic level numbers. And that amounts to approximately 7,000 students. So we'll have 7,000 less in 2025 than what we've had in 2023 and 2024, basically. Thereabouts. That doesn't sound too impressive to me. 7,000 less. That's it. That's all it is. Now, the ones complaining about
that's pretending that there isn't like a billion fucking pathways around this shit. Like getting in, fucking getting off the visa, and just basically waiting on the fact that like our own deportation services basically don't want to fucking touch you.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't mean that they don't have other visa options. You know, I mean, the Student 500 visa is often seen as just, you know, something to get you into Australia so you can work. And, you know, you have a fake enrollment at some fucking college that doesn't exist. And you say that you're only working 20 hours a week, but you're actually working 40.
Taking cash under the table.
Jason Clare admitted that was part of the reason why they're capping it, because they want less people doing that over here. And, you know, it's easier for them to keep track of stuff like that when they've got smaller numbers. But, okay, fine. Those 7,000 people who are left out, how many of them are then just going to turn their attention to some other visa? You know, they might come over here on the visitor visa, and then there's still a wide range of options that they have before them. You know, the student visa is only one. So, again, you can't say that guarantees an overall cut of 7,000 people. Now, also, I must read this out. Some student categories are not included in the national planning level. National planning level is the name that they've given to the cap. Okay, so here are the categories that are not included. Schools. Okay. Typically, people who come in on a 500 visa, they're here to go to uni or to TAFE. But you can come over as an exchange student as well. Doesn't include them. Students studying in standalone ELICOS courses. I think that's English as a second language. Is that what that is? I don't know what the full acronym stands for, but anyway. Higher degree by research students. So PhD students and masters by research. Non-award students, including short-term exchange students. All Australian government-sponsored scholars and visa holders. Key partner foreign government scholarship holders, other Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade or Defence sponsored students, students that are part of an Australian transnational education arrangement / twinning arrangement, where part of their study is completed with an Australian provider overseas and part in Australia, students from the Pacific and Timor-Leste, that is East Timor. Okay, and that's it. That's a hell of a lot of categories. Okay, all of those people, all of those categories, not subject to any form of cap whatsoever. They can still come in, unrestricted. So yeah.
Yep.
Even though we have heard from students and, of course, from the big universities that this is going to be catastrophic, they're even, you know, doing things like I've actually got one here. So this was data that some Australian universities released. This was actually prior to the announcement of the cap, because they knew this was coming. So they're warning of a loss of 15,000 jobs in Australia because of, you know, the money and everything that these students apparently bring in. Actually, no. I'd say that means that, if we do assume that 7,000 of them don't come over, that would be about 3,500 jobs that you would save, considering they're allowed to work 20 hours a week. Okay. That
That would
means
be
7,000 people who wouldn't put Australians out of jobs.
that's enough to put a decent dent in wage depreciation. That's enough. Well, that's more than enough, actually.
Yeah. And look, I don't doubt that it's enough to put a decent dent in the financial stakes of universities and even tapes as well. I don't doubt that. Otherwise, they wouldn't be going apeshit over this.
Well, they're going fucking apeshit, yeah, because of lost money, lost revenue. But ultimately, I think that even them, quote unquote, suffering for this is a good thing, because what are they actually doing in the interim? What do they want to do? What do they want to become? They want to become degree mills. And that's what they functionally are right now. Degree mills and migration cheating centers.
Yes. I mean, and that's the problem with, could you call it like the education industrial complex? It is not performing the basic function, which is, for students to attain a high academic achievement and then use those skills in the workplace. If that were the case, they wouldn't have Pajit studying a Masters of IT who doesn't know what a thumb drive is, as was revealed at also university.
Even what you said there is a big conceit, because while university was meant to be a center of knowledge, it's not even necessarily like, oh yes, I get this practical degree and etc. Universities, including Oxford when it was originally founded, the idea was like fucking like literally alchemy and arcane and esoteric knowledge that was being studied and researched. Now it's just like an industry thing. And that's considered a good thing, because it's a hop, skip, and a jump above a degree mill. That should concern fucking everyone.
It's just, give me money and I will give you a bit of paper that says you are qualified in whatever. And then you can either go and drive an Uber, or if they're foolish enough, they'll actually let you onto a site while you'll cause enormous industrial accidents. They're your options.
And failing all that, you can rape a white woman in an alleyway.
Yeah. Which is just going to happen increasingly.
Yes. Especially, dude, we're already fucking seeing it. There's already been murmurings and shit about like police getting antsy because their fucking rapes and essays are going through the roof now.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, another, I guess, important detail of this is that while there is, yes, that overall cap, universities themselves will be subject to varying caps. So there will be larger amounts allowed in regional universities and TAFEs. The larger, more inner city campuses, they're the ones who will be, hurt most by this.
Yes, so the rural-eyed will have to suffer the Pajit damned.
Right, which, as I said before, I mean, is that really a preferable option? Because, then we push the diversity into the areas of Australia where people have run away from the diversity. It'll still find you in that regional area.
Maybe it's good they're going out to the regions, because we just need to train. We need to set up a TAFE course where we train Wolf Creek style killers and have them deal with them as they're out there.
Oh man, it's infuriating. Okay, so let's get on to other immigration news. So another report from the Australian finding that 28 former immigrant detainees have been charged by the AFP with breaking bail conditions ever since Labor placed them on bridging visas. And that includes 13 alarming offences for failing to stay away from schools and other education facilities. So, as you can imagine, that means sex offenders who are not allowed near institutions that have children in them.
That means some certified freaks.
And, the AFP has also said that these charges do not include state-based breaches of visa conditions. they only include, well, what is under their remit, Commonwealth law. So yeah, that only just gives you a small idea of how many. And if you didn't know, I'm talking about the people who were let out of immigration detention after that High Court decision. So they just continue to cause trouble. All right, now we've got a very crispy story here. So a 23-year-old man, whose name is Yoga Lingam, and I heard someone say that can be translated into stretching
penis
phallus.
Stretching? Yeah, penis stretching, Mr. Penis Stretching, Mr. Dick Stretcher.
Some people think this story was fake. They thought it was just like an elaborate troll, but no, it appears that it's real. So this was a man who was from Sri Lanka, but he was a Tamil, who apparently are a persecuted minority in Sri Lanka, and asylum. So he was in Australia apparently for 11 years on a bridging visa, which begs the question, what kind of a fucking bridging visa is that? Bridging visas are supposed to be like the most
a bridge to the other side of the fucking world.
11 years? That sounds like a fucking PR visa to me. Anyway, this guy, the other day, apparently in protest over his immigration limbo status, set himself on fire. And yes, he is now dead. I got to admit myself, when I first came across this, I guess maybe because I saw it on Telegram, I thought maybe it was, a prank, but no. So he did this at a skate park in Noble Park on Tuesday.
Imagine the smell. Burning turmeric.
Yeah, and he was taken to hospital, so he didn't die on scene, but he died a short time after in hospital as a result. So a council spokesman told the ABC that this man's claim for refugee status was previously rejected under the controversial fast track system that was introduced in 2014. And also, remember when Labor basically fast-tracked a bunch of asylum seekers in 2023? It apparently left about roughly 10,000 people were left over, so they remained on bridging visas or humanitarian visas or whatever. They're the ones who were protesting outside of Tony Burke's office last week, which the EAM went and crashed, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So
good on you, boys.
This guy, I guess, was part of those 10,000 who was in immigration limbo, as they call it. This just begs the question, like I said, when it came to the status of his bridging visa, how the fuck was he allowed to stay here for 11 years on a bridging visa? He should have been sent back.
This is okay. Yeah, for starters, we're not sending them back. His bridging visa could be cancelled. He could be in this country as illegal, and we've already had cases where this person wasn't deported, even though he did 1 million mega rapes, because he wasn't cooperating with deportation forces. It's just the idea is you're meant to go there, grab by the fucking ankles, and throw them on a plane, not be like, "Oh, pretty please, can you come talk to us and maybe we get you on a plane or something." Literally, this is just a mental health thing, or the guy's a fucking retard thinking he's actually going to get deported from this country. The only people that they're fucking serious about deporting are the Irish, because I've seen that fucking happen.
Usually when they're doing illegal work.
Yes.
Yeah, I have heard about that. I mean, you know what? I'm opposed to that as well, but it's not something I really care about. Or fucking any white worker, doing something like that. I think you should go through the proper processes and everything. But I am far more concerned.
You could only get me
Tamil lighting himself on fire in a skate park. Why is he in my country?
Yes,
he should
I was
never
like to say,
have been here in the first place.
You could only get me to give a shit about like illegal Irish workers if, like, one, I was in like the ethno state, and two, we had like a massive labor oversaturation in the market like we do now.
Then it might become an issue.
Then I would give a shit. But until then, like, literally, like, dude, you got fucking Stinky Brigitte over here in my fucking office. Like, I don't. These problems are not comparable.
Did you see that doctored photo that's been doing the rounds? I posted it in our chat earlier.
Oh boy.
It's like the protesters who are protesting at the moment about getting a permanent residency.
Oh yeah.
They were holding up signs saying things like, "I am a taxi driver. I am a nurse. I am a like all these jobs that we apparently need." Someone
I am
doctored
redeeming
it
Google Play card.
I am a Pajit. I am a carousel. I am a terrorist. I am subhuman. I am an Iranian spy. It goes on. It's very clever.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, yeah, I found the image. Holy shit.
So
I am a curry jeet. I'm a curry cell. I drive car poorly. I'm a terrorist. I love the African one. Just straight to the point.
Yeah, don't read that one.
You can people in the audience can take a guess what the sign the African's holding says. It's I am a insert blank.
Yeah. I am a word that could get us banned from YouTube again. All right. So let's go on to the Israel-Gaza conflict. Now, last week we spoke about the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra and how they pulled a performance of, I think it was a solo piano piece where the performer of that piece said that it was dedicated to journalists who had lost their lives in Gaza ever since the conflict broke out there. They also issued an apology to people saying, that person shouldn't have said that. We're not a political forum. They're not supposed to go and make political statements at our concerts. So since then, a lot of the musicians in the MSO effectively went on strike. The Cat Empire postponed their tour because they were doing a tour with them. And we don't know if they're going to reschedule that or not. Anyway, there has been an investigation into the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra's policies around artistic expression on stage. So that has been commissioned and will be led by Peter Garrett, who, of course, is the Midnight Oil singer and former Labor minister as well. The guy who gave you the burning pink bats. So many of the people from the MSO basically condemned their director. And I believe, so Sophie Galais, she was the managing director of the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and she has since stepped down, basically because everyone in the orchestra demanded her to step down. So, the fallout from this incident has not stopped yet. But look, I bet that, once word got out that this guy was dedicating this song to the Palestinian cause, effectively, that is where a number of so-called creatives on WhatsApp all got together to do a letter writing campaign to put pressure on the MSO to do something about it. I haven't read that, but I know that is what fucking happened. How else would this have happened? So, this woman probably, as in this, the managing director of the MSO, probably didn't give a shit in the first place that, this guy wanted to dedicate one of his songs to a cause. You'd think that is actually part of artistic expression, doing something like that. And I bet she was
we know
by emails from neurotic fucking Jews demanding that they condemn it and pull the performance and everything. I fucking bet that's what happened.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'd even go fucking further to say that there was a someone in the actual fucking structure of the theater itself. I reckon there's a a Hebrew in the clockwork.
Yeah, quite possibly.
It is fucking performing arts.
Yeah, but I mean, it's an orchestra, so it doesn't have that usual subversive element to it that, most performing arts mediums have. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. They like to have their fingers in all sorts of pies. I'll put it that way.
That is true. Yeah.
Okay, I bet if I looked it up, I could find one. I bet. I'll be willing to put money down on it. I bet if I fucking looked up the structure, I could find one.
If you read Battle Lines by Brendan Sanderson, he actually talks about how Jews created their own classical musicians to be held up with the same reverence as Beethoven and Bach. And they did so simply by promoting him. Much like how Einstein was promoted by it.
Yep, I was going to bring it up. There's fucking Linzhou was basically the German physicist who basically did relativity, and all the fucking big. If you got a science kit back in the day, it was a German dude, because all the fucking during that period of time, because radiation was the big thing. And if you wound the clock back, a few hundred years before that, it was either Italian and French dudes with electricity and chemistry. Not Jews. And then all of a sudden, all these physicists and really non-practical, the German root, the German word for science is the study of the natural ways. Basically, if you expand it out, all these people who just do theories and basically improvable stuff, just suddenly are the awash right now. I'm not talking about astrophysics either. I'm just talking about string theory. I'm an applied scientist. I hate fucking theoretical science.
Oh, so you don't like Lawrence Krauss then, the theoretical physicist?
Because he's a great example of what I'm talking about too.
Yeah, he's part of the whole new atheist movement and that kind of stuff. I don't know that much about him. I know, but he's a theoretical physicist, and I know that he lost his position at some university for groping a lot of women. He's meant to be a specifically pervy Jew, if you read about him. Anyway, so we might also remember, what's this woman's name again? Deborah Conway, who I believe is a Jewish musician, Australian, and she was doing a performance in Hobart. There were a number of Palestinian protesters who kind of crashed the event. They were initially just protesting outside of the building, but some of them got in and disrupted the performance. One of the women in the audience took particular exception to this and actually went and smashed a wine glass and then held up the jagged remains of it, like the stem of the glass, in the face of one of those pro-Palestinian protesters. Now, if you don't know, that is still a form of assault, even though she didn't stab her or make contact with her. At least I don't think she did.
It's menacing, isn't it?
Yeah, if you threaten someone in any way, and including if you wave, a knife or something sharp in front of someone's face, that's a threat of an assault, therefore an assault under the law. So, this woman was found guilty of one count of assault in the magistrate's court in Hobart. And it's a 66-year-old woman who did this.
All right, Grandma.
Yeah, you can. By the way, you can freely watch this online. Like, I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. And she's fucking angry. She's absolutely steamy. You can see her like smash the glass and then wave it in front of her face. So yeah, I mean, some of these protests are getting nasty. You know.
Let's get spastic up in this bitch.
All right, now the Greens might have actually pulled off a form of trolling that I find funny here, believe it or not. Now, as we know, there is a huge call to have an inquiry into anti-Semitism on university campuses. We are sort of getting one next year. Labor did announce one, but it's just on general racism. And the focus is actually going to be on Aborigines. So this is not what, say, someone like Julian Lisa was for. So basically, think of all the Jews in Parliament, like, God, why have I
Think
forgotten
of
his name?
Parliament as one gigantic Jew.
Josh Burns.
There we go.
Josh Burns, Julian Lisa. They have all said, no, we need like an anti-Semitism only inquiry because that is the only thing, worth investigating in unis. So what they've gotten instead is a Senate committee to determine whether or not there should be such an inquiry into anti-Semitism. Now, the Greens initially had the Senator David Shoebridge there to take part in that committee. Now, for some reason, they have substituted him for Marine Faruqi, who, as we know, is the very vitriolic Paki Muslim, currently suing Pauline Hanson for defamation. And, some people would even go as far to say that she's an anti-Semite because she has spoken about Zionist power and so forth. The Liberal Party is essentially saying that, look, they're trying to stir the pot here because David Shoebridge is the guy who they send to committees like this. He has been for a while. Marine Faruqi is not. So, yeah, I don't know. This maybe could be something like that. But I saw Shari Markson on Sky News talking about this and how appalled she was about it. And then she was questioning some Liberal woman. I think it might have been the Shadow Education Minister. And she said, well, wouldn't this mean that Marine Faruqi could ask tough and even hostile questions on that committee? And I thought, yeah, what the hell is wrong with that? She's basically saying that tough questions, like questions that say would suggest that we shouldn't have a judicial inquiry, could be asked. Right? It's a committee. You're supposed to give people a grilling. You're supposed to seek out the truth no matter where it lies and interrogate people and get all the detail that you can. So I would have thought that having, a hostile actor, if you want to put it that way, would actually assist the democratic process. That's the whole reason we have these debates in the first place, isn't it? But no, not according to Shari Markson.
It's almost like there's a level of protection given to certain topics for no fucking good reason.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see what happens there. And Marine Faruqi also refused to condemn Hamas, if we remember that Insiders episode that she did.
It'll be fun to see this just because of, not because like, oh God, they're going to save the Palestinians and obliterate Israel. Israel alone, fucking, yeah, great. No, I just want to see that because of the shit show. But it's just, for the exact same reasons as like, I wanted to see the Aboriginal voice to Parliament. It's like, yeah, I just want to see it because it'll be a massive shit show.
Yeah. If we're going to have a decline, you might as well enjoy it. Enjoy what you can of it. Okay. I don't know why I put this in the Israel-Gaza section, but Jim Chalmers did some speech. This was the anniversary of John Curtin's 1943 election victory. And he doubled down on his attack on Peter Dutton. If you didn't know, he has been saying that he's driving division in Australia. I think he's mainly, this would have been why I put it in here. Main reason is because, Dutton calling for a blanket ban on issuing visas in Gaza at the moment.
Yeah.
I want the ban. Yeah, I support that, actually. I agree. But I want that ban extended to Israelis as well. Considering you're talking like 3 to 5 times the amount of Israelis have actually come into Australia. 3 to 5 times more than the Palestinians we've let in. Why doesn't anyone talk about that? Seriously, no one is mentioning that. Okay, let's go on to the economy. Unless you had something else to add there.
No, that's pretty much it.
Okay. So, we got some figures for you on, headline inflation and trimmed mean inflation. So it's hard to know what all this stuff means. But anyway, so in June, headline inflation was 3.8%, and it has fallen in July to 3.5%. When it comes to the trimmed mean inflation, that was 4.1% in June, and it has now fallen to 3.8%. So whatever measure you've got, we are actually below 4% inflation now. And, officially our peak was like 7 point something, I think. And WA actually had the worst of it. We had higher inflation than anyone else.
Yep.
So, I'm guessing that the Labor Party is sighing a gasp of relief here because interest rate rises, of course, what accompany long-running inflation. And if you have like 2 or 3 of those before the next election, you can pretty much guarantee a hung parliament at the least. So it doesn't look like we're going to get one. The Liberal Party was saying they predicted 2 interest rate rises before the next election. By these figures and this trend, that does not look likely. However, don't think that it would mean an interest rate cut either, because the Reserve Bank still has the goal of inflation at 2.5%, and we're obviously still well above that. So, yeah, I think they're just going to plod along for a while with the current rates. And I'd say we're probably just going to go in with the exact same interest rate that we've got currently into the next election.
God, that's going to fucking suck. Everything's so fucking expensive.
Right. Well, the Liberal Party are trying to, or the coalition are trying to capitalise on that. And I dare say that they think a bit of the sting would be taken out of the argument now, given these figures. But anyway, they've announced what they claim would be $100 billion in savings if they were to pass the next budget. And they've called it a back to basics budget that would be inflation fighting. So, they said that Labor's last budget in May was inflationary because basically it had too much spending, too much stimulus in it. They're trying to sell to the Australian public that, we should have a more austere budget so that it is not inflationary. Now, look, I don't know if that really resonates with the public because, remember, part of what you call an inflationary budget is in the form of cost of living relief. It's actually like, say, credits to your electricity bill to help you fight the ever-increasing costs. So if the coalition pulls back on some of those measures, I don't think they're going to be popular. Now, we don't have any data.
But Finian, the only way out of inflation is to make you fucking broke. And then there's inflation.
Yeah, but I mean, that seems like a tough message to sell voters. It's like, okay, look, you're going to save money, but still, we're going to take away like all of those government goodies that you're used to getting. But it's okay because that means the prices will come down. That's pretty tough to sell to the public, I think. Not many people buy that.
No,
I mean, remember when Rudd gave out his stimulus money? He had the highest approval rating of any prime minister in Australian history when he did that.
I'm going to be the money prime minister. You're all billionaires.
People respond well to Gibbs. You know, maybe only in the short term. You know, because Rudd didn't even last a full term in the end, but still, at that point in time, he was extremely popular. Okay, and finally on the economy, Albo made a rather tasteless joke when he made a speech here in WA. He was talking about the live export ban that, of course, is
that's not going to go good.
Incrementally. And so, oh no, I'm sorry. This was in Canberra, not in WA, but our Premier,
I didn't get an alert for that one.
Roger Cook did condemn this. A Labor Premier condemned this. Albo was at a Rural Women's Award night in Canberra, and he said he had just come from dinner with Indonesian President-elect, I'm not going to read his name, where they enjoyed beautiful Australian beef, not the live export. We made sure it was dead. Right. Not a very funny joke, you can imagine.
No, that's...
Albo himself admitted...
It's not offensive.
No, it's not offensive either. It's just crap. That's all.
Yeah.
It's just a shit joke. But, yeah, a lot of people didn't like it, especially because there were a lot of farmers in the audience who, of course, are very much opposed to the live export ban. So, yeah. Okay. Let's go into climate and energy. Now, last week we mentioned the Environment Minister, Tanya Plibersek, essentially announcing a veto on a new gold mine that is estimated to be worth around about $1 billion. Now, it's not quite that simple. It is, I'll read it here. So, Plibersek announced she was using the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Cultural Heritage Act to excise the headwaters of the Baloobala River from the proposed mine's tailings dam. But that doesn't mean that they aren't allowed to actually mine there. However, the company involved and other stakeholders have said that this action is effectively going to kill the mine. Like, it's impossible to actually do any of the work with this decision in place. I'm not really going to pretend like I know exactly what that means. I'll read it again. To excise the headwaters of the river from the proposed mine's tailings dam. I don't know if you know really what that means, Nolsey. But Albo did make a statement saying, no, this is just like a restriction. We're not saying that the mine can't go ahead. But the people involved in it are basically saying, yes, that is what it means.
Well, yeah, no, there's certain processes that basically, if you say, like, they're all like, oh, okay, that isn't the main primary mining operation, but it's secondary and tertiary operations. Sometimes with tailings, you're talking about like low-end refinery.
Okay.
So yeah, no, that's basically saying like, oh yeah, you can fucking do everything in terms of making breakfast except for put on a plate and take it to the table. Okay, well, you're not really making breakfast, are you?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So this decision was taken under Section 10 of that Act. And this was despite the fact that the mine had actually passed all state approvals. Now, you know who else approved of it? The Aboriginal tribe whose land the mine is apparently on.
Oh,
Okay.
there we go. That means they came to a nice big dollar figure agreements.
Yes. Yeah. And also, even Chris Minns, the New South Wales Labor Premier, said that he is disappointed with it. And the mine was actually set to generate around $200 million in royalties for the state. And also, I don't have the figures on it, but that Aboriginal group that I mentioned, you can imagine why they approved of it. Think of how much money they were going to get out of it. It's just how it works.
Yep.
Now this was, Tanya Plibersek was lobbied by the Green Lobby, the environmental lobby, to exercise her powers under Section 10 that lets her do this. So, this is green lawfare. They are using it. They're using it to good effect. And sometimes it actually even offends their allies on the left, who would otherwise support something like this. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Albo is insisting that this project will go ahead, but anyway. Okay, so we had a big protest in Bendigo in Victoria. I love the fact that they're going out doing a lot of these. So this is about green energy infrastructure that is being built in regional Victoria. So as we know, all of those things that power green energy, they come from somewhere, whether you're talking about wind turbines or massive solar farms or whatever. And they certainly are not built in the cities. They're not built in the suburbs. They are built right out in the rural areas by the people who tend to actually vote against such policies. And, they are actually, if you think about it, they're taking up the cause of real environmentalism here. For example, one of the signs that I saw was trees, not towers. Okay? Yeah.
Okay.
Bloody good point.
Yeah.
Think of all the fucking power and transmission lines and wind turbines and whatever else that would have to take place of trees and other vegetation out in these areas. They've absolutely got a point.
Yeah, how much shit would they actually fucking destroy? How much land are you going to fucking process into what is functionally like a crystal green nightmare, a crystal blue nightmare, to get these renewables goals?
Yeah. So look, she's saying that she still supports the whole consultation process on all of this. We've covered before that, with the desperate attempt to, get to net zero by 2050 and all the other ridiculous emissions targets that we set ourselves, many people are saying, look, we just don't have time to do that. We need to rubber stamp all of these infrastructure projects and just ignore everyone who lives in these areas and just build them anyway. Fuck them. Let's just do it. And that's the problem. We are always in this hysterical, mad rush to get these things out there. That's why there's not enough battery chargers for Teslas. Okay? Like, we haven't had enough time to adapt.
Here we go. I get to talk about something that's actual, realpolitik rather than, the fucking just commentating on the insane fucking bullshit that goes on a day-to-day basis in this godforsaken fucking country. But no, it's because literally all these projects are pushed through because they're investment hype and signaling projects. They're not actually carefully considered projects for the development and, benefit, long-term, short-term, job creating, fucking industry reinforcing, etc. They're literally just, we have to make big noise about it because the fucking whoever is invested in green power that pays for these ads and pays for these NGOs to make a big stink about it all the time, needs to make their money back, or I need a signal that we're stepping in line with neoliberal order when it came to that fucking Paris Agreement.
Right.
That's it. That's all this is. Now, granted, it's fun to talk about that because I'm not talking about Infinity Indians like normal.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I should have mentioned this story earlier, but we've got an Indigenous group representing Aborigines here in WA, representing specifically the rock art and industry-rich Burrup Peninsula. I remember on XYZ Live, we showed some images of what some of this rock art.
There's Stonehenge. That's literally a pile of fucking shit.
So they're saying they're currently opposing a number of major projects here. And they're saying that they are hamstrung by a 2 decades old law that effectively prohibits it from ejecting to any major projects in the UNESCO World Heritage nominated area. Now, this is one of the Aboriginal groups who actually supported Tanya Plibersek using that veto power under Section 10 of that Act to put the kibosh on that gold mine. They're now imploring Tanya Plibersek to go and do the same thing here in WA to protect these areas where there is priceless rock art. Now, what's funny here, when this became a big news story, was when Rio Tinto started that project, and they blew some things apart, and they said that they destroyed this sacred site and all of this art. Well, that Rio Tinto actually paid to have all of the rock art removed safely, intact first. Then they blew up the area. A lot of people think that they just blew up all the rock art, and that is not true.
Should have just blown that shit smooth. They should have fucking done it.
It would have been no loss if they did. They were squiggles up on the wall. That's effectively all they were. Yes, some of them were old, but it was shit. You could barely call it art. But still, to this day, everyone
Down syndrome
Rio Tinto
fucking drawing of a kangaroo
destroyed all of this art. That just isn't true. They actually painstakingly had it removed and preserved. Nonetheless, you still get certain Aboriginal groups, maybe because they're not the beneficiaries of the royalties that come flooding their way, and they're having a dispute with another tribe that they don't like. They tend to be the ones who say, "Oh, no, we don't want you to mine here," or whatever, drill for gas here, whatever it might be. Okay, now, the Snowy Hydro. Gotta love this. A project that has been going for about a decade, that has had $10 billion in cost blowouts, has already at minimum cost us $12 billion. It has been a force to acquire an additional tunnel boring machine. And that's because they increasingly were encountering what they referred to as complex terrain. And, they didn't know how to bust through it. They didn't know how to dig through it. So constantly, burrowing through these tunnels was stalled. And they need... Again, obviously, this is much more your area, Nolsey. I don't know the mechanics of tunnel boring and whatnot. But
it's a very boring topic, man.
Cost alone is $75 million.
Yeah. I mean, dude, you're literally fucking busting up rock and stone, etc., and it's in a fucking river area. So as soon as you get past the clay, which isn't actually all that deep in a river area or a fucking ravine area, yeah, you just end up with fucking hard rock, and you have to pay for the fucking little heads that you literally hydraulically bash against it. You've seen those tunnel bores, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. Just a kind of bigger, meaner looking version of that.
Okay.
Imagine that, renting out one of those for a few months.
Well, look, despite the fact that one of these costs $75 million, those running the Snowy Hydro project said that they will not need additional funding, and they can still meet the amended time frame. Note amended, because this was not the original time frame, of completing the project by December 2028. So they reckon they can still meet that deadline. What's the bet that they won't? And I bet that the cost blowouts far exceed the cost of this boring machine. $75 million. It'll be a lot higher. Okay, now the Greens and David Pocock, the Teal, and the Senate have called for an investigation into the federal government's $1.5 billion commitment to the Middle Arm Industrial Precinct in Darwin Harbour. Now, the reason for this was supposed to be a sustainable development precinct, but it has now been conceded that this industrial precinct will include petrochemicals processing. And this was actually something that both the Northern Territory and federal government had denied previously. So yeah, now the environmentalists are raging about this because, oh no, it includes fossil fuels. Who gives a fuck?
At it again, okay. Homosexuals.
So we might be aware of the plans for Tanya Plibersek to overhaul our environmental laws. The main part of this was to implement an environmental protection agency, exact same name that they have for that body in America. That is proven to be extremely burdensome, but that's what they want here. Now,
remember the EPA was the villain in the Simpsons movie.
I haven't seen the Simpsons movie.
You're not missing much.
That's what I call New Simpsons, which is anything after season 8. I don't watch that. But anyway, those laws have been delayed again, partly because they're not securing support for their nature positive laws. Now, as you can imagine, the coalition is saying basically that this goes too far. They don't believe that we should have an EPA because we already have enough environmental regulation and watchdogs and everything. Why on earth do we need another one? And from the Greens, the complete opposite. They're saying that it doesn't go far enough, and they want the EPA to have a climate trigger, which basically means that the EPA will independently be able to say no to a project on the basis that it would not be environmentally sound. That includes how much carbon emissions it's estimated to produce. That is the Greens model. That's what they want.
Oh, fucking Jesus.
So far, at least, the Labor have said they do not support a climate trigger. But remember, the Greens policies of today are the Labor policies of tomorrow. It may only be a matter of time until they shift on that.
And then the fucking Liberal Party policies of 2 years down the fucking line. Anyway. Yeah. And then the One Nation policy 6 years. There we go. That's it.
The nature
Remember
positive
fucking
bills
Pauline?
that they-
Oh, I was gonna say, remember Pauline? India is considered part of Asia too.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, look, if you're wondering, those laws were actually introduced into Parliament in March. And yeah, they've effectively been in limbo because they can't get support from the Greens or the Coalition on them. So it might end up like laws on religious freedom, and they're just going to shelve them until after the next election. Okay, now Facebook has been accused of removing content that is pro-nuclear. So Facebook have been saying that they have only been removing content that is disinformation or misinformation. Those people who have had things like pages taken down, of course, are saying that's bullshit. What we've been putting up are just basic facts on nuclear power, how much it would cost, how dangerous it is, how long a reactor would take to build, things like that. And yeah, look, I haven't looked into the details of this, but I mean, I had a couple of Facebook pages back in the day, many years ago now, and I can tell you, they didn't last very long.
Oh, I swear to God, I thought I am all but shocked because I used to fucking do this under my government name. I'm all but shocked that my fucking government name did not show up on a fucking annual report on anti-Semitism and ECAJ fucking report, man. Because holy shit, some of the stuff I fucking sent, my God.
Yeah, and back then when I had those pages, that was even before cancel culture and the mass purging of YouTube and things like that. That hadn't started yet.
Yeah, no.
And
yeah, no, they were censoring.
They were the ones who were doing it. They were self-censoring. They were doing it like before it was cool.
Yes, Facebook was super fucking controlled, but also, dude, they censored first, and then when us little naughty boys found a way around the censorship and the account bannings and etc., then they just started being like, okay, like here's where doxing becomes effective and etc. No, before then you could have reasonable discussions on the internet, and basically some dude on the other side of the world would just threaten to sodomize you. Dude was me, by the way, Americans. Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, look, I would say that, and this goes for like even normie conservatives, like Facebook just is not good as a political platform. I mean, I hate to say it, but Twitter, that is what evolved into an actual political platform. And, because it's run by Elon Musk now, you're not going to get pro-nuclear stuff banned on Twitter or X. At least I don't think you will. Our stuff, you want to post white national stuff, that will still get banned. But at least, if you want to do pro-nuclear or whatever, go over there. Like, Facebook is a lost cause. You basically shouldn't even bother with it. It's just a waste of time. Okay, Aboriginal news. Linda Burney made her valedictory speech in Parliament. They caused some people to speculate as to maybe we're headed for an early election, because why would she do? She's not retiring right now and going to a by-election or anything. She is just sitting out her term on the backbench, and she'll retire at the next election. But anyway, she made her speech with a standing ovation at the end, of course. She got teary, other people got teary. And as you can imagine, the whole speech, or almost all of it, was about Aboriginal representation in Australia in the Parliament, and of course how disappointed she was at the referendum failing. She said, "It is now
up
the
news articles." I was going to say, did you see the news articles? Because we obviously covered the Northern Territory election, right? But the turnout, especially among Aboriginals, was abysmal. with busing efforts. They even admitted that there was busing efforts. Like literally, they had to fucking pack these fuckers into buses. They are now just straight up admitting that shit, which is great.
Yeah, the ABC.
They said that
the ABC. Well, the
I was
ABC
gonna
said
say,
it
yeah,
was because they were bummed out because of the no vote in the referendum.
yes.
Because they said that they had a much bigger Aboriginal turnout at the last election. Well, look, I would just say this. Since then, we've had a massive uptick in Aboriginal crime. Okay. I dare say that had an effect on it. For one thing, you'd have more of them incapacitated, like locked up, unable to vote. Some of them may have lost their right to vote. But also, just when you've got rampant alcoholism, well, you've got a hell of a lot of people who wake up on election day, because it was on a Saturday, remember, with a fucking awful hangover, and they just don't turn up. I think that would have been a much, much bigger factor in rather than the idea that they just became like politically despondent because of the no vote.
I don't think they have the agency or the neurons to rub together to be despondent about the no vote. I don't think something that happened 15 minutes ago has presence in their mind.
Yeah, not really. Not really.
And I'm not pulling a racism there. I'm not doing a disgusting racism. I'm actually being serious.
Yeah, but also they're saying that this translated into a lower vote for Labor because I made this point on the Race to Decides that the only like regional areas that Labor do well in are the ones with large amounts of Aboriginals, right? And that includes those spots in the Northern Territory. And in fact, they were the only seats that they held. All like the inner Darwin seats, they fell to the CLP. So yeah, that would have actually been a factor. The fact that less Aborigines voted, because their vote always goes to Labor. But anyway, here's what Linda Burney said in a valedictory speech. She said, "It is now up to everyone here, and I know you will, to ensure that reconciliation and closing the gap are policy areas of bipartisan cooperation, of common ground, not division." Well, you're right and you're wrong there, Linda. For one thing, yes, unfortunately, it's got bipartisan cooperation, and they will keep pushing with those policies, no matter who's in government. But the idea that you're actually going to close the gap, you're not going to reach it. You're running on a treadmill the whole time with all this. So, no.
You're running against hardcore fucking biological restrictions. You'd literally have to basically give these people liver transplants at birth and then do a fucking full organ fucking cycle on them like every 8 years. And put them in padded cages. Or a zoo, maybe. We do know that Aboriginals fare better in captivity than in the wild.
That's true, they do. They do. They are safer.
That's not a joke. I'm not. Yeah.
I know.
For the audience, that's not a joke.
True.
We are being 100% honest when we say Aboriginals do better in captivity.
The Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody found that Aboriginals were more likely to die in the community than they were in jail. I shit you not, go to Quadrant if you want to read those details. Okay. Let's get on to the related topic of crime. Now, in Queensland, they now have, so the laws were just passed. Actually, I'm not sure if they're implemented quite as of yet, but these are powers for police to randomly stop and search people for weapons, without cause. You can just do it to anyone you want. Now, this was known as Jack's Law because you had a 17-year-old, Jack Beasley. He was fatally stabbed outside a surfer's paradise in 2019. So, I was talking before about Queensland crime. This is one of those examples of knife crime. I can't remember the details on this one, But if you look at pretty much all the other knifing incidents that we've discussed here, they have either been by Aborigines, Pacific Islanders, or Africans. Like, pretty much exclusively from one of those three groups. Like the Islanders at the train station, the African who stabbed the 70-year-old woman, and the Aborigines who stabbed a couple in, I think it was suburban Brisbane, and they killed the woman. Remember that one? Really horrific shit. And it was that incident that finally got Labor to go back on their reform bail laws. They made it effectively legal for you to break your bail conditions. Like, you wouldn't be punished for them. Because those kids who did that stabbing were out on bail, and they did not give a fuck. So, what do I think about these laws? Well, I don't ever like giving cops these kind of powers, But again, it's another one of these examples of where you have low agency, low IQ, high crime minorities making things difficult for all the rest of us because of the fact that they are the ones who are likely to use knives instead of kitchen utensils and use them as implements of crime and murder. The rest of us have to suffer because, of course, we don't have the power to just keep those people out of our country. Instead, we have to control their means of committing the crimes, which in this case means knives. And you even hear stuff about people wanting to pass restrictions on the type of knife you can buy and shit like that, or how many knives you're allowed to own.
You fucking serious?
Yeah. Well, I mean, because in London, for example, knife crime's out of control. They don't really have guns over there, so they use knives instead. So, naturally that means that people start talking about knife control. It's like, hold on, can we actually take a look at the people who are wielding these knives? So, you know what? I would absolutely want, if you wanted to sell these laws to me in this way, which is that any African, Pacific Islander or Aboriginal can be randomly searched for knives, hell yeah. But what's the point in searching white people? They never fucking carry them. What's the point?
Because fuck you. And also, just even without training, even internally, the kind of person that the police select for would be the kind of person that has a fucking nervous tendency to make sure they just persecute white people because they may feel in the future that they need to actually, put their hands in a slightly aggressive way on a brown person.
No, that's what happens. I mean, remember the stop and frisk laws in New York? I think it was Rudy Giuliani who did that. Police were basically encouraged to go and stop and frisk white people frequently so that they didn't look like they were targeting blacks and Hispanics.
And they still got accused of it anyway.
To show that, this wasn't a form of racial profiling, that, they basically had to go out. You even hear about it at airports when it comes to, random searches and that kind of shit. They'll go and search some 80-year-old woman's luggage because she might have a fucking bomb in there. And they're doing that just to show that, they're not targeting Muslims or whatever. It's fucking ridiculous. Just fucking stupid. Racial profiling works. It absolutely works, and we absolutely should do it. Okay, so we've got a report from what is apparently an expert panel on domestic violence, specifically violence against women and children at home. Now, this was initially under fire and still is actually because of the fact that there was no Aboriginal woman on the panel.
Is the cat trying to kill you again?
No, she's just trying to get let out. and give it a minute. She'll want to be let back in. So anyway, what did this expert panel find? It has called for harsher alcohol and gambling laws to bring down rates of sexual, domestic, and family violence. It also recommended more crisis funding. Funding for crisis accommodation. So, things like women's shelters, that kind of thing. And a development of a national response to online misogyny and radicalization, among other measures. Now, what they're talking about there is like Andrew Tate and that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Now, all that stuff is fucking stupid. I think it's ridiculous, and you're wasting your time if you watch it, or you're a fucking idiot if you do. But the idea that, like, the men's rights movement or whatever is fueling domestic violence is just ridiculous. And it's funny, or maybe not funny, but like you have to sort of enjoy the irony when you hear about, say, sexual abuse allegations coming from the Greens, because they're the first ones to talk about how they need to stamp out sexism and men acting like pigs and stuff like that. And then you actually read about some of the stories that have gone on with Greens staffers and even politicians sometimes, and just how inappropriate some of them have been with women. There's some pretty rough stuff out there. But you almost never hear about those scandals when it comes to people who do speak on men's rights. You never hear allegations against them of, like, sexual misconduct or something. You just don't find it, funnily enough. Now, look, I do agree with what they said on alcohol and gambling, though. I want to see that ban on gambling advertising. John Howard agrees with me.
Yeah.
Jeff Kennett agrees with me. Malcolm Turnbull agrees with me. So, this isn't just like bloody far left femos talking about this stuff. There's a hell of a lot of conservatives who have realized just how damaging gambling can be. So, yeah, I agree with that. But look, when they talk about the harsher alcohol restrictions, well, again, this is like when I say it's a minority of racial minorities who are making things hard for the rest of us. Because white people don't tend to get drunk and go home and bash their wives. Aborigines do. So, unfortunately,
some of them bash their husbands.
You've got to put out blanket restrictions that affects everyone, including those who use alcohol responsibly. So,
Yeah. Well, there was an instance of an alcoholic, back in the day in the Northern Territory who made bathroom pruno, and then proceeded to talk about how beating his wife was the white man's right that was being taken away from him by the Yehudim.
Okay. Well, okay, that leads very well into our next story. So this is on Katter's Australia Party. So the deputy leader, Nick Tomito, he was one of the guys who was protesting, counter-protesting Palestinian protesters. Like, he had signs up condemning Hamas and stuff. But anyway, he was taking part in a podcast that I think actually had Bob Katter. Yeah, it did. It had Bob Katter, had his son, Robbie Katter. So a lot of people, they were doing some sort of podcast together. And Nick Tomito said that domestic violence essentially should not be treated as a police issue, but an issue that families just sort out themselves. So here's what he said. They used to leave you alone. Police, government would leave you alone to self-govern in North Queensland. If someone was bashing your sister, you and the cousins went around and sorted it out. Nothing to see here. Now, police officers are spending 80% of their time on the beat sorting out domestic violence issues because people can't sort stuff out themselves, or the government has told them they can't. If someone wants to make a domestic violence report, it needs to go through Queensland Police. When people were able to self-govern, things may have been better. Wow. So that's, if you hear about your sister's partner bashing her, you're supposed to round up your mates.
Rally up the troops.
Pay this guy a visit.
Ernest, well, for stars, what about for single sibling fucking women? But,
You're on mute. Weren't you just about to say something there, Nolsey? Okay, maybe he's just encountered an emergency of some sort. Maybe his girlfriend's bashing him. Look, I'm certainly not encouraging it. But, if I hear about a guy who goes out and sorts out some issue like that because he heard that his, sister is getting beaten or whatever.
It shouldn't be up to vigilante justice. Sorry, dog situation. You got a cat situation, you got a dog situation.
Some sort of domestic situation there.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, look, he's got a little bit of a point, though. Like, it is true that, back in the day, people would sort out those disputes privately, and that was it. The police wouldn't get involved in any level. Even in retribution attacks, the cops wouldn't get involved. But, again, I just wish they would talk about the racial element here. The fact that, it is true. We've gone through these figures before. Domestic violence is increasing in Australia. That is true.
Yeah, I wonder why.
But the reason why...
Do you feel particularly beaty these days? Has your, particular desire to beat women increased over the past couple of years? I don't think it has. I think there's another cause to that.
Depends on how much Andrew Tate I have consumed. That's where my my tendencies to bash women fluctuate.
I mean, are you of Irish heritage? So are you of the good old Irish family wife McBeaty?
Ah, Jesus. That man, Seth MacFarlane and Family Guy, they created that stereotype.
Yeah.
Us being an Irish person, that stereotype was invented by Family Guy. Us being drunk, that was always a stereotype, but not the wife bashing stuff.
I don't think it'd be a good idea to beat an Irish woman because they have an absolute fuck ton of brothers, and that's just a bad idea.
Yeah, they do. Look, I mean, if I heard about that some guy was sorted out in that way, I certainly wouldn't shed a tear for him. But, you still should follow the law. And that means getting police involved. If there weren't so many of those incidents, they would be able to take those more isolated incidents more seriously. But because it's so bloody common, that increases the flippant attitude towards it. That's just another day at the office for a cop because they just see so much of that stuff all the time.
Imagine how grating it would be.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the state parties and the territory parties. They get a mention today. Of course, the CLP has been voted back into power in the Northern Territory. Leah Finocchiaro is the new chief minister. And she said that she is planning to push through as quickly as she can Declan's Law. So Declan was the 19-year-old who was stabbed and killed working at a Dan Murphy's by an Aboriginal who was out on bail. So this is basically making it so if you're a serious violent offender, you cannot get bail, or at least making it very hard for you to get it. So she said that would be introduced in week 1 of the new parliament. She's already had a meeting with the police commissioner, who's a complete piece of shit. Michael Murphy, I believe is his name. And she was also promised to lower the age of criminal responsibility from 12, as it currently is in the Northern Territory, to 10, and to give police greater powers and wanding, like they're the metal detectors, basically. And dealing with public drinking, so public drunkenness. Again, things like arresting a pissed person on the street or randomly wanding people for knives or guns is like not really something I like the cops doing. But when you have so many crime-prone Aborigines, about 31% of the Northern Territory's population, you just kind of think, well, okay, I guess you have to. It's the only way to keep it under control, unless you actually had racial profiling that they'll never do.
Yeah, no, it's dude, we're in an open air zoo, and the fucking zookeepers wear blue in this one,
Yeah, and increasingly security guards as well, because they have such a shortage of police in the Northern Territory.
Yeah.
I wonder why. Okay, so to the New South Wales Liberal Party, we all know about that big blunder where they missed the deadline to nominate 140 candidates in council elections that are coming up in September. They originally were saying that there may be a chance to win this in court. They were going to take the New South Wales Electoral Commission to court, but those plans have since been abandoned. They have come to their senses and they realize that, no, this was just a deadline like any other. You missed it, and that's it. There's no recourse here. So they're giving up on that. Now, they're still playing the blame game here. So Ray Hadley, the right-wing shock jock, has said that it is completely untrue that the party president, Don Harwin, was not to blame here. Now, if we remember what happened initially, the other guy, oh man, what's his name? I'm sorry I can't find it here, but there was another person from the Liberal Party's executive who was sacked. He was called on to resign. He held a press conference saying that he wasn't, and unfortunately for him, only hours later, he was sacked. He actually leveled the blame at Don Harwin. So did a number of other people, including Tony Abbott. But the one person who defended him was Mark Speakman, who is the leader of the Liberals in New South Wales. Now, it's been revealed, well, not revealed, it was public information, but I guess this is the first time I've read it. Don Harwin is a moderate power broker. So, it seems that those people, not of the moderate faction or the moderate persuasion, people like Ray Hadley, may actually just be going after this guy because he's a moderate factional leader and they don't like his influence over the party. So I don't know. Some people are saying it's his fault, some people are not. It may well have something to do with the factional allegiances that these people have. Now, in October, there's going to be a double state by-election, and they think that factional squabbles are going to put that at risk as well. So they're running two relatively unknown candidates, and they are running in Liberal-held seats. and they're terrified that they're going to lose them.
Yes.
So,
For good reason.
So here's what a Liberal source said. An unnamed source said this to the Australian newspaper. The chaos caused by Don Harwin and his friends on the state executive has put both Liberal Hornsby candidate James Wallace and Liberal Epping candidate Monica Tudhope candidacies at risk, and that's a very sad thing. So this debacle concerning the council election seems to have spilled over into the state parliament, where they're saying that people are actually looking at the Liberal Party as an unmanaged shit show, and that is causing the party to lose support as a result. Now, I would also say the fact that one of those seats is being vacated by Matt Keane, very, very moderate Liberal member, so moderate that he said that the natural home of the Teals is in the Liberal Party. So
yeah, we did. Yeah, well, he's not wrong, because the Teals are like, be gay and get daddy's money too. At what point are the Liberals just going to be gay? Just straight up gay?
Okay, let's get on to the Tasmanian Liberal Party. So Michael Ferguson, he is the Deputy Premier and the Treasurer, but he has just resigned as the Infrastructure Minister. And this is due to the bungled rollout of new Spirit of Tasmania vessels. I'm not going to pretend like I know a lot about this. Basically, you're just talking about big cruise ships. And apparently there was a huge delay over this. Cost blowouts, all the usual things that you often see in the infrastructure portfolio. It was widely seen to be this guy's fault, but now he's got a state budget coming up because he's the treasurer. And Labor are going to crucify this guy in Parliament over that, because obviously by resigning the infrastructure portfolio, that is an implicit admission that you fucked up, even if you haven't gone out and put your hand up and admitted it. And they're obviously going to say, well, if you can't handle something like that, actually funding these boats, how on earth are you going to manage the state's finances? And remember, Tasmania has, I think it's a $3.5 billion debt, but which may not sound that big. But remember, Tasmania's only got 500,000 people. They're very small. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, a debt of that size is, a little worrying, to say the least. Okay, now, we're still in Tasmania, although this does relate to federal parliament as well. But there's been a bit of a ruckus in the Jacquie Lambie Network, which, of course, is Jacquie Lambie's political party. They're headquartered in Tasmania because that's where Jacquie Lambie is from. But anyway, there were two MPs from the Jacquie Lambie Network who sit in the Tasmanian state parliament who have been kicked out and will serve the remainder of their terms as independents. Now, the Jacquie Lambie Network accused these two MPs of having a cozy relationship with Minister Ferguson, who's the guy I just mentioned, the former infrastructure minister, including sharing question time questions before asking them. Now, that's quite an accusation. Now, I'm pretty sure they've denied that. That is like inter-party collusion. You basically just never hear of that. So they said this undermines the duty of the people of Tasmania to hold the government to account. And then she said the usual cliched things like they no longer represent the values of the party and, blah de blah.
Yeah.
Look, they would have quit anyway because that seems to be the normal trajectory of these minor parties, especially when they've got like one like cult like leader at the top. Just think of Palmer, for example.
Yeah.
They always just break away, and usually quite early on. Right. So remember, the Tasmanian election was the beginning of this year, and the Jacquie Lambie Network has already lost 2 of the 3 MPs that they have in the Tasmanian Parliament. Now, what happened since then was the Liberal Party, who is, I was about to say the only Liberal government in the country, but no, there's 2 now. We've got the Northern Territory as well. They were scrambling, of course, then to go and see if they could secure the support of those 2 MPs. Guess what? They got it. So on Tuesday, these MPs are Rebecca Pentland and Miriam Beswick. So they signed an agreement on Tuesday with the Rockcliffe Liberal government. And this is basically on guaranteeing confidence and supply bills. This is a common thing that like independents and sometimes minor parties agree to. They basically just say, look, any kind of funding bills, we'll just push them through for you. Because otherwise you get, a parliament that basically can't function. You end up with what you might have had during the dismissal in the 70s.
You don't end up with a hung parliament, you end up with a fucked parliament.
Yeah. I guess that does lend some credence to Jacquie Lambie's accusation that they were too cozy with the government, because there they are now actually guaranteeing supply bills. So I don't know. I have not examined this too much, to be honest. So it may well have actually been a case of these 2 women didn't really know what their own political leanings were. And that's not a stretch, okay? Very often these parties run extremely inexperienced candidates who actually don't know that much about politics to begin with. And then they actually start to develop their own political views once they start their career in Parliament. I mean, do you really think someone like, who was the motoring enthusiast guy? Ricky Muir? He obviously, when he entered Parliament,
great jawline on him, by the way.
He didn't know much. He knew about kangaroo shit, and that was about it. And, he initially was in a voting bloc with Palmer. And after a while, he broke away from that. So did, like, everyone else in Palmer's party, except for Dio Wang, who just...
Yeah.
And he just seemed to be, like, his brain just did not seem to operate at all, that guy. Because he did not even know that he was the leader of Palmer United, because the original Senate, that is.
Yeah, it is like, he found out in the interview about him becoming the leader.
He was the leader in the Senate, Glenn Lazarus, and then he left. And like by default, Dio Wang got the leadership. And apparently he didn't know that. He was unaware. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. But look, what I'm saying is it is very possible that these 2 women, these 2 MPs, simply realised that they were more politically aligned with the Liberal Party, and that's what's led to this. That's, could well have been what happened. Now, they have, however, demanded that they maintain the same level of staffing that they got previously. Now, typically speaking, independent MPs do not get the same level of parliamentary funding or electoral funding, I should say. and sometimes don't get the same amount of staff either. So apparently, the Liberal Party have guaranteed that to them. So that's part of the deal. Okay, let's go to the federal Liberals. Now, Gerard Rennick, the so-called maverick senator from Queensland, he's a guy who opposed the vaccine mandates, for example. He is going to establish his own political party. So he was knocked down on the Senate ticket in Queensland, I think from like position 3 to 4. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, this was said to basically be the moderate party ganging up on him, and I think it was because Peter Dutton, who obviously is from Queensland, apparently was denied his substitute vote because he couldn't make it. And he's actually a supporter of Gerard Rennick. He wanted him kept on top of the pecking order, but he didn't get it because of, the machinations of the moderates in Queensland. So anyway, in response to this, he has quit the LNP and he's going to form the Gerard Rennick People First Party. So this is running on a platform of increasing the tax-free threshold from $18,200 to $40,000, paying childcare support directly to families, ending renewable subsidies and abolishing renewables on agricultural land and waterways, making superannuation voluntary, and re-establishing a public bank and government insurance office. Okay, you could maybe say that that's a conservative populist platform. It is a bit of a mixed bag, I think.
Yeah.
Tax-free threshold, yeah. I mean, if you're earning $40,000 a year, that's
is Jacquie Lambie going to join this one?
No, I mean she's still running her own dictatorial Jacquie Lambie Network.
He's doing whatever the fuck is going on in her mind.
Look, I definitely agree with him on the renewable stuff. Probably do agree on the tax-free threshold. Paying childcare directly to families, maybe it might be better than the current, scheme that just seems to keep making childcare costs go up all the time. I would much rather just like baby bonuses. You just get paid more for the more babies you have, as long as they're white. That would be preferable. Making superannuation voluntary? No, I'm sorry. I have to really disagree with that way. And what was the other one? Oh, establishing a public bank. Yeah, sure.
Yep.
Definitely. Abolish the Reserve Bank. And
that's how you fucking die. But
get rid of the Reserve Bank completely and establish a state bank. And yes, what's wrong with government insurance? That works too. Okay. Now, I mean, look, that doesn't mean this guy's got a chance. He might have a, somewhat large social media following, but, that going to translate to a Senate spot? I'd say probably not. Okay.
I mean, to be fair, one of his policies is how to get on like every single intelligence organization's fucking kill list immediately.
Well, yeah, that is true. Okay, so the last story on the federal Libs. They have announced their candidate for the seat of Macnamara. Now, Macnamara is held by Josh Burns, Jewish Labor MP. Now, remember, this is the seat that is likely to go through significant electoral boundaries changes. That is going to mean you're going to get more gentrified inner city hipsters within that seat. It was already kind of like that. But what a lot of people are worried about is that it could actually go to the Greens completely. And that is something that even Mike Kelly, former Labor MP, said he's worried about. He basically said that, he had to go at the Liberals because some of the Liberals were saying, okay, this might not be such a bad thing. We may not like the Greens, but at least it'll take your seat away from Labor. And Mike Kelly was going after them, saying, how can you say that when the Greens are an anti-Semitic party? Because he was one of the founders of Labor Friends of Israel.
Oh,
and
God.
yes, he does go so far as to say that the Greens and basically anyone who speaks out against Zionism or whatever is an anti-Semite. Anyway, who have the Liberal Party chosen to run in this seat? A man by the name of Benson Sorlow. Now, he is a 36-year-old man of Aboriginal and Papua New Guinean heritage who has a strong stance against anti-Semitism. And the Australian is spruiking him as a well-placed fight for backing of progressive voters in McNamara. So what they're trying to say here is that they need to appeal to the progressive vote, to that hipster vote that is there in McNamara, while at the same time promoting a strong opposition to anti-Semitism. They think that that is some kind of winning combination that could get this half Aboriginal, half Papua New Guinean man into the lower house. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, no, it won't. Look, I'm still predicting that that Josh Burns will get this. For one thing, there is still a large Jewish vote in McNamara. They, in large part, are responsible for electing Josh Burns. Now, yes, it may be true that Australian Jews tend to favour the Liberal Party, but guess what? They also tend to vote with their own. Josh Burns is Jewish, and so I don't think it's any coincidence that so many of them have backed him. Not only that, but the party would win out on preferences flowing from the Greens directed towards Labor. I don't see this guy, Benson Sorlow, as a guy who's going to take much of the primary vote from Labor at all. I don't think this guy's not getting in Parliament is what I'm saying.
No. Not fucking at all.
All right. Now, we're about to have some new rules implemented in the federal Parliament. Now, this was stuff after... so we had a report handed down by the Parliamentary Standards Commission. This report was published back in 2021, and the reason we got it in the first place was because of Brittany Higgins' rape allegation. So, this was implemented by Scott Morrison. Anyway, the report made a number of recommendations, and it looks like they are drafting legislation to pass some of them. So that includes federal MPs being fined up to 5% of their salary, being kicked off parliamentary committees, and possibly even suspended from Parliament if they engage in what is deemed to be inappropriate parliamentary behaviour. So things like sexual harassment or whatever. So yeah, tougher rules that apparently, is going to prevent future rapes from happening in Parliament House. Let's see how that goes.
The men in Parliament House will never be safe after I get into those hallowed halls.
Yeah. Okay, now on Penny Wong. She's said to be someone who guards her privacy, quite protective of it. I don't know about that. She seems to be quite fine talking about her adopted children that she adopted with her lesbian partner, for example. So I don't know about that. She'd also evoke her Asian background when talking about Pauline Hanson and how she originally didn't want Australia to be flooded with people like her. But anyway, she has apparently given like a rare personal interview about her life. I'm just reading this from the ABC. Sorry, I'm not sure who conducted this, but anyway, she said that she felt very, very insecure about being Australia's first ever Asian Australian minister, which she was, I think, back in the Rudd government. I think that would have been when that first happened.
Timescale sounds about right.
Yeah. She said that she has grappled with racial discrimination and self-doubt based on her racial identity in public life. So she said that was a source of insecurity for her. Okay, maybe. That's quite possible. I'll point out, first of all, that Penny Wong is actually a Happer. Her dad is like a Han Malaysian, as in Chinese Malaysian. And her mother is a white Australian of English background. Now, that's actually rare. It's usually the other way around.
That is.
Yeah, usually the mother is Asian. So, but, they tend to be the Happers who are more mentally stable. That said, and I'm not saying this to be cruel or anything, but Penny Wong had a brother as well, who obviously, like her, was also half Asian, half white. And when just after Penny Wong was elected to the Senate, he killed himself. Now, I don't know exactly what was going on, but it may well have had something to do with his confused racial identity.
Bomb disarmed.
Yeah. Look at what Barack Obama has said about his own racial identity, being half white, half black. He said that he abused cocaine as a result of it. So
he could afford cocaine. He could afford cocaine, which means it was at least half white, because otherwise it would have been crack.
I guess so. Yeah, but I mean, he admits to dabbling in drugs and stuff, and he said, part of that was struggling with his own identity. And that's the way a lot of these people think. So, dare I say that had something to do with that guy taking his own life. But yeah, Happers, though, who have an Asian mum, they're the ones who turn out the worst. Elliot Rodger, for example. Now, his dad was a Jew, but, still. He probably thought, what, my dad wasn't good enough to get a non-Asian wife, Oh, wait, sorry. This was a speech that she gave to the Centre for Asian Australian Leadership. Oh, my God. Yeah, these organisations do exist. And, Penny Wong strikes me as a lifer, someone who just doesn't want to leave Parliament, She just wants to be a minister till she dies. Anyway, let's move on to LGBT news. So, the next census that you're expected to fill out is going to be in 2026. And absent from the census, or at least what they're planning, is any questions on LGBT issues. So that includes, I'm not sure if that includes, like, are you LGBT? Are you part of one of these groups? Are you X? Are you non-binary? Do you prefer not to say, or whatever? I mean, that stuff is just on everything. You can't find job application now where they don't ask those questions. So I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't include that. I think what they're more getting at here is like attitudes to LGBT issues. What do you actually think? Do you support things like gay marriage, gay adoption, co-ed toilets, and that kind of shit? So Jim Chalmers said that has been excluded to avoid encouraging nastiness. Now, I speculated on Telegram that the government is simply afraid of gauging these attitudes. What if the census data turns out to be negative? And there are actually a hell of a lot of people who say maybe they voted yes in the plebiscite for gay marriage, but at the same time they think that the whole transgender movement is getting out of control and is a step too far, because there are a hell of a lot of people out there who think like that. And I think they're afraid of that. I think they're also afraid of the fact that those attitudes will tend to come from pockets of Western Sydney where they have large Arab and Muslim populations. They're afraid how that would look. Now, someone who said, no, these questions should be included is, speak of the devil, Josh Mearns. So he said that he's currently lobbying the government from the backbench to include those questions, because this is data that we need, and Australians.
He's going to use it to name and shame people on it, isn't he?
Maybe he might want to collect.
He's going to use it saying like, "Oh, you." No, not collect blackmail material, but like, "Oh God, look, this country hates gay people so much. Oh my God, $1 billion to gays."
No, that could be part of it. Maybe.
Yeah.
Interesting theory.
If I was being an evil little fucking if I was going to be the chosen children of Satan, that's what I'd do.
Okay, fair enough. But no, I definitely think that the decision from Chalmers to exclude. I mean, what else could he mean by nastiness? He's afraid of some of the answers that people are going to give, and that a lot of people are going to, give negative answers. Okay, so quick stories for you to round out today's episode. On education, state education ministers are actually being branded as hypocrites by the Commonwealth government because they have been demanding more funding. At the same time, they have not been allocating enough funding in their state budgets to public schools. So Jason Clare, who is the federal education minister, has been miffed by the fact that some Labor education ministers have actually been turning up to protests with the Australian Education Union at Parliament House. Talk about disunity. Labor education ministers protesting a federal Labor government. You can see why Jason Clare is pissed off about that. But yeah, he pointed out that it's not the Commonwealth funding that's the issue. It's actually the state governments that are ripping off the public schools. That's debated, of course, but, All right. Now, on national security, we've got an American military base in Exmouth. It continues to expand, and apparently there is further plans to expand it. These were the kind of sites that Midnight Oil would sing about, and they would actually talk about Australia selling off its national sovereignty to foreign entities. Yeah, that's definitely what we've got here. So they've also earmarked other sites such as Curtin and Learmonth. They've been earmarked for various project upgrades with a $18 million investment pipeline. So this is for hardening up Australia's northern military bases. And when they say Australian military bases, they really mean American ones.
Yeah.
There might be some Australian.
I mean, the American one, the function, it's not American on paper, but Jesus fucking Christ, you go there. Who has, wait, here we go. Here's a true test of who owns something. Who has the fucking gun in their hand at that point? It's a whole bunch of fucking Marines.
The one in Exmouth actually is American on paper as well.
Yes.
But these other ones that they have, like particularly in the Northern Territory, yeah, they're Australian in name, but like the Yanks run them.
Yeah, basically. It's like look who's there holding the gun. It is a fucking U.S. Marine.
Yep. Okay. We also we've had more fishing boats, illegal fishing boats, detected off Western Australia. So apparently the ABF is responding to an uptick in these vessels being reported.
That nation's head smooth off.
And yeah, they are catching more of them. So well, there you go. The Border Force doing their job. We've got out of control legal immigration here, but hey, they're stopping the illegal fishermen.
Right.
Oh, so a motion has just passed in Canberra supporting the idea of Taiwan as sovereign territory and not, as Paul Keating put it, Chinese real estate. I dare say this motion was passed to kind of neutralize the comments of Paul Keating that he made.
I didn't know that Paul Keating's hard on for China extended to the where he was against neoliberal policies.
To an extent, it is.
I guess he just fucking Jesus Christ. Did someone in China suck his dick so good that this is what he's about? Well, not these days. Since forever, but yeah.
He does live in Ports Point. Always remember that.
Has someone been sucking his dick so good?
Maybe.
Mr. Wong from down the street has been sucking his dick so good he's fucking gone against neoliberal policies to support China.
Now, look, the Chinese government obviously is not happy about this, and they have actually repeatedly claimed that Australia does in fact accept Taiwan as a province of China. But yeah, now it's official. We've got a motion passed in federal parliament saying no, we do actually recognise it as a sovereign country.
Well, that's because we've had to make the split because of the. Obviously, that's because of US pressure. Sorry, there you go.
Yeah, it would have been. Okay, now the very exciting topic of transport and infrastructure. So in Queensland, they have now rolled out the 50-cent fares. So this was, I think, just bus and train rides. I hope I'm not getting. I know definitely buses anyway. So it was 50-cent blanket fare. With, obviously the government heavily subsidising it to make up for it. Now, ever since this has rolled out, there has been hundreds of fines issued for people who are evading paying the ticket fare. I'm like, guys, it's 50 cents.
What?
What are you doing? Yeah, apparently it's okay. So we got 475 fines. 2,406 warnings, and minors who are 2,406 warnings given to adult commuters, while minors who are not fined were issued 1,576 warnings. And the on-the-spot fine is $322. When you could have just paid 50 cents. What are you doing, Queenslanders? 50-cent fee, and you still don't want to pay it.
Is there a drunk situation here going on?
I don't know.
I mean, sure, you'd Queensland. Think that, they do have Townsville in there.
You'd think that this would drastically reduce the amount of fines that they hand out. I don't know.
Was that maybe some of Jordan's fallacy? Was like,
why would they bother checking my ticket if it's only 50 cents? Maybe that's what some of them are thinking.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is this like a Jordan's fallacy where it's like you increase the efficiency of a system so more people use the system, therefore like bottlenecking the fuck out of it?
Well,
Like if we
no,
drop
that
the
was one of
price,
the
that people like
that was one of the initial criticisms, because they said, well, look, this means you're going to get a shitload more people on buses, and what will then happen is the bus will be full and it can't take any more passengers. And they were saying, look, okay, fine, you want a policy like this, that's okay, but you've also got to produce more buses and more bus drivers as a result. It's not going to just operate the same way it did before. Okay, so the Sydney Metro City line has officially opened. Apparently, was it Friday night made up 64,000 people using it from 5 p.m. until late. And yeah, around about 200,000 people. Oh, no, sorry, more than 1 million passengers boarding since it's open. Wow. So, very big. And believe it or not, 99% of the services have been running on time. So, could this actually be an infrastructure project that has worked out for a state government? How about that? And they've said that so far they are exceeding expectations. How about that? Now, on the other hand, however, the long-awaited Parramatta light rail has been delayed, and that won't come into operation till later this year. It was supposed to come into effect this month, but unfortunately that one was delayed because testing found, quote, kinks in the system. So, got to wait a little bit more for that. Okay, now on disability and the NDIS. I mentioned last week that Bill Shorten was not able to get the state premiers on board because, what Shorten was essentially accused of doing was the areas in which he was cutting federal funding, he was simply handballing to the states. And, state disability services would then have to pick up where participants couldn't join the NDIS. Now, I swear it was like right after I put the episode up online that I then went and read a story saying that Bill Shorten had actually secured a deal with the state government. So this is, we're told, a $14 billion saving to the NDIS over 4 years. Now, that's not a $14 billion cut to its budget. It's a reduction on its rate of growth. It was growing at almost 14% a year, which now is about $40 billion. And to put that into context, that's about the size of the foreign student industry in Australia. In other words, a lot. It's big. And it's also bigger than Medicare, even though it's only been in place for a few years. So something had to happen. Now, the Greens said that this is an absolute disgrace. Jordan Steele John, that genetic defect of a human out in a wheelchair, was going out there using the most emotive language he possibly could. I'm sorry, man, but that guy is just like a biological monstrosity.
No, he's the exact if you've got like the fucking blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Giga Chad fucking eugenics product, yeah, he's the exact fucking form opposite of that.
Yeah. You want a great argument against miscegenation, just look at a picture of Jordan Steele John right there.
Hey, you want a great argument against miscegenation? A random person of your ethnicity that you pick off this will be closer related to than your own child. It's a fact.
Anyway, the legislation has already passed, and it passed with the support of the coalition. Makes sense. The coalition have been also very critical of the ever-expanding NDIS budget. Now, I don't have all the details in front of me, but we obviously know some of the things that are on the chopping block here. Prostitution, for one. Other services that are ridiculous, like crystal therapy, cuddle therapy. Just honestly, you think of like anything that someone may consider to be therapeutic, you could basically get it on the NDIS. So all these ridiculous
I'd like some
expenses
crystal
have
therapy these days.
yeah. It's also
Like some crystal
basically
meth therapy, that is. Anyway.
it's going to be harder just to get on it as well. It's going to be harder to just say like, "Oh, I've got autism, give me money," and that makes sense. I definitely support that. Uh, Not just in terms of the autism stuff, but it's just I hate how we're so keen to assign mental illness labels to people. Because I think a lot of the time we're just providing them with an excuse. You know, they excuse their own shitty behavior because of some bloody made up mental illness. Or they're able to go on a pension and not work because they feel too sad or something. It's like, you know why you feel sad? Because you don't do anything all day. Of course, you're going to be depressed if you sit on your ass and do fuck all. That's why you need a job.
It's one of the problems we run into. It's one of the problems we run into with our criticisms of this country and etc. Is because we have this package. We've got this package idea of like how to fix it. And yeah, you could have something like an NDIS and a reasonably funded NDIS in like a place where either me or Finian is a few etc. The problem is it's holistic. It's the entire fucking picture. You need the hard cultural basis. You need the hard family supports. You need all of this extra material that has been completely and utterly destroyed and taken from us to actually make that kind of system work. This is an NDIS system is completely non-conducive with what this country is, which is an economic zone. We are not meant to care about you if you're sick. You are not a useful member of society. You're not a value-producing member of society if you're sick, injured, disabled. We're meant to step on you and destroy you because of the capitalistic way.
Well, look, if you're a Pajit, you get given a permanent visa so that you can forever suckle at the teat of the public purse because you got into a violent brawl in Hobart and ended up in a wheelchair. So I get what you're saying there, Nosy, but you know.
Oh no, it's not like it's not strictly a capitalist system. A lot of it is just fuck you, Whitey. Again, I think her son even today said that like like we are funding the birth rates to domestic and abroad of non-whites through our taxpayer funding money. That's because we are. We genuinely are. I'd rather be funding the birth of a white family, a lower rung white family than anything else. But well, unfortunately, we don't get those options, do we?
Okay, so the defamation case brought by Linda Reynolds against Brittany Higgins and David Shiraz is continuing. Brittany Higgins was expected to give testimony. She is not anymore. They have, of course, cited the usual stuff like her mental condition, her frailty over it. Linda Reynolds' lawyers, I believe today, were saying that they don't buy that, and they say that even the medical records that they've produced do not suggest that she is incapable of giving evidence. Okay, but you know who else is not giving evidence? David Shiraz. So you're talking about both parties here that their suit is against are not giving evidence. And, at least Brittany Higgins actually was, gave evidence at the rape trial in the ACT. David Shiraz, he's always there in the background. You always see him like walking next to Brittany Higgins, but you never hear from him. He's never questioned, and he never gives interviews on anything like that.
David Shiraz's savings account should charge him with rape.
And he looks frighteningly like Bruce Lehrman as well. It's really weird.
It's almost like she has a type.
Yeah. Now, look, another writ has been filed by Lina Reynolds' lawyers to access the $2.4 million that Brittany Higgins got from the federal government, that payout to do with her employment while she was employed in Canberra. Because once she got that money, within 24 hours, that was placed into a trust that effectively meant, other people couldn't touch it. And dare I say that they were preparing for something like this, because Lina Reynolds' lawyers now want to be able to access that trust. It's hard, obviously, for them to do it, but they're basically arguing that if they were to win, the only way they could be awarded damages would be if they could actually get at this money, because that's basically where they have put all of their money, is into this trust. Okay. Oh God, just quickly, you may not have heard of her, but Merle Thornton. She was one of our first feminist activists in Australia. She died.
Oh yes,
90 something.
Satan's gonna chop her head clean off.
93. She was 93 years old. Now, what she is perhaps most famous for is back in 1965, she, along with Rosalie Bogner, another activist, chained themselves
Bogner's
to
Jewish.
a bar at the Regatta Hotel.
To allow women to pubs. Yeah, Jesus,
because
this
there
bitch.
was a ban on women drinking in pubs at that point in time in Queensland. So that was actually part of the Queensland Liquor Act. Oh, yeah. So we did actually have laws like that. Now, did you say Rosalie Bogner is Jewish?
But Bogner, the last name is Jewish. Yeah, okay, no, Bogner, the last name is Jewish. Yeah.
Because Merle Thornton was not Jewish. She was, however, a professor of philosophy. So, that makes sense coming from that kind of background. But yeah, Rosalie Bogner, I don't know if she was. I mean, I wonder how many Jews they had behind them, though.
Yeah. It's not the front man. That's why she's the front for, I guess, front woman. Oh, God, use gender-neutral language. But, yeah.
Okay, so finally we had an e-scooter story last week. That was on the city of Melbourne. They're basically phasing them out. They're banning them. They're too much of a pain in the ass. They're unsafe. People don't use them responsibly. People steal them. All sorts of problems.
Oh, dude. I'll send you a photo. I was walking back from the city to surf over the weekend, and I was walking to Scarborough, with the people I ran with, and to get a drink because Jesus fucking Christ, after 12 Ks, what do you want? A beer. And there was this giant mud pit on West Coast Highway, and it's like, it's a big pit. It's like fucking like, probably like 10 feet down and fucking like, feet across and 80 feet wide. And there's like just a whole bunch of e-scooters in there.
Oh,
people have just thrown the e-scooters into the mud pit.
Oh, man. That's quite a fire hazard, dare I say, considering all the lithium batteries there. Okay, well, today's closing story is on the company Beam Mobility, who is one of the biggest providers of these e-scooters. Now, they have been providing to various local governments, so to councils, and they're currently under investigation by 5 local councils, including Brisbane, Auckland, and Canberra, for manipulating monitoring technology to exceed the cap on the number of scooters allowed. So what they've been doing is they have been putting more scooters than they're allowed out on the streets and basically saying that they're not, so that they're getting more money from them and they're not paying the appropriate bills to the local council, thus depriving them of their money. So they said in some cases they deliberately went over the cap of scooters by as much as 30%, which is depriving those councils of thousands of dollars in lost revenue. So it also looks like the companies who make these scooters are just bloody dodgy themselves.
Well, yes. And that's why, like, to get out my psychotic episodes, I crack open one of these little batteries and eat the lithium inside.
And please don't do that.
No, this is not healthy for you. Only qualified lithium vampires should be cracking open these scooters and fencing the lithium metal inside. No, I never got the fucking like idea about this or etc. Like, I'll side with like fucking like really fucking gay leftists at this point. Is that like public transport is better, like decent public transport is better, but also the problem is we can't really do public transport. So actually, now this makes sense. If you have brown people in your country, you've got e-scooters instead of buses.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So you see, they were supposed to pay registration fees on each e-scooter, and also a percentage of the fares paid by the riders would go to the local councils.
Ooh, that's why.
Yeah.
That would be a shit ton of money.
They were putting these phantom scooters out there that there was no record of them. Thus, those fees were not going to the council.
Well, I was going to say, like, if there's any council members that are actually listening, I talked with both a lawyer, a civic planner, and an engineer about this. You said, like, actually, if you want to get out of a contract with them, all you need to do is start using your public dishevelment orders, etc., and charging them for every time they're pushed over, or a stack of them is pushed over, or they're left somewhere in a dirty or an uncouth state. Because basically every council in the city has these orders for like, stuff that looks terrible. Like you're not allowed to like leave something in a terrible state in a lot of councils just because.
Well, look, I mean, thankfully, a lot of councils now are phasing them out. So
yes, because they were a bad idea.
They were. All right. Well, that again, closing on e-scooters. That was our last story for this episode. So I guess we will aim to get back to you with another one in a week's time. Please check us out at theracer.biz, and we'll see you next time.